After being marked as a traitor by the Earth government, Catherine Halsey realized that in no matter of time, she will be found by the government's best tracking teams. So she kept her always on the move for several months. But after a few months of the run, she was tracked down by Fire Team Osiris. She was pretty much giving her best way to get away from the team, but she knew it was nearly impossible because this team, one of the best trackers the Earth government had to offer. As she was putting coordinates in zip space, the fire team Osiris was firing upon her ship, and as she was entered, she only after 10 seconds, she left zip space. She was wondering what happened. But at least she was also worried if that fire team Osiris had followed her. But there were no ships in it for miles in space. But then she detected one planet in orbit, or at least some distance. But it didn't match of any of the coordinates that she had set for. But she couldn't even travel that far, she realized it. After just 10 seconds would have been enough distance. But she didn't have much things to be thinking because suddenly the ship's alarm started going off. Turns out that even that she knew that her ship was fired upon, but what she didn't realize the damage the fire team Osiris had caused the ship. So she had only one option: try to land on the planet and find a safe place to hide. But even if that was true, she had no idea if this planet was one of the major military outposts or even a smaller colonies. But she had no other option. She had to land on the surface, even if it meant crash landing. Even this was something that Catherine had no experience in. She had never even been much experienced in flying a ship, but she didn't have much option. So she approached the planet, and as the alarm was getting off, she realized how severe the damage were. It turns out the ship space generator or the engine had been damaged, but she couldn't assess how far or how severe the damage are. When she approached the planet, the turbulence in the atmosphere was was so bumping from her, but she managed to keep the ship steady as long enough. After that, it was over. But she had to find a good spot to land. But then she realized without the main engine, she wouldn't been able to fly around for long. And in fact, she only had less than 30 seconds before the ship would have to force crash landing. So she saw this big dense forest in the distance, and she thought maybe that could have been at least enough coverage. So she first tried to fly there and land safely, but as she was approaching, the engines cut off. They just turned off. Now she was gliding from the air, and she was trying to prepare herself for crash landing's impact. And bang! That was the last she remembered what happened. At least about almost 2 hours later, Catherine woke up. She was in daze. She didn't even remember what happened. But after she looking around, then it came to her. She was fired upon the fire star Osiris, and now she had crashed on this unknown planet. She wasn't really sure if this could have been one of the most planets that had Earth government's military presence on. So after she got up from the chair, she still felt that she didn't have any broken arms or anything. But as I'm saying that she was perfectly fine, she went back to the console to see how severe the damage were on the ship. And this turns out the listed ship's computer were perfectly fine, but she asked the computer for damage report of what systems are still working and what system that needs some repairs and what things are beyond repair. After about almost a half an hour, the ship had made a full schedule of the full checking of its systems. Shields inoperable, beyond repair. Communication beyond repair. Life support still working. Engines beyond repair. Weapons that was also beyond repair. So it turns out she was defenseless on this unknown planet. But at least that the life support was working. But by just based on look on the window outside, she saw trees, grass, blue sky. So indeed it knows the planet is habitable, but she wasn't sure if it could sustain even human life. So she made the computer to scan the atmospheres what it consists of, and it matched as very similar conditions that humans need to survive. So she opened the door and she walked out, and sure enough, she was in this dense forest. And she looked up. It was so dense that maybe that if anyone was flying above her, they would even notice her. So she realized at least now she was safe for a moment, but for how long she didn't know. But now knowing that she is unable to fly from this place, and not without any shields, she wonders if that she could repair the ship's shields just for even for temporarily. But as she wanted to figure out some of the compartments that she didn't even have any spare parts. So without the shields, she was not sure what was going on. But at least though that she checked out her supplies. She still had some medical supplies and food supplies that would last her for about almost a week. But if she rationed some of the food, it would probably last her for almost like 2 weeks. But she wasn't really decided to spend that enough time in this particular one place. But for now, it was the only place that she had. And since she had crashed on this planet in the middle of the late afternoon, she assumed it was probably only a few hours before the midnight until the sunset. So she decided not to leave this area. But she made only a short scouting around this vicinity of the ship just to make sure there was no signs of any people or basically any colony or anything. But there was only dense forest. She only heard a lot of sounds from animals, birds, more like that. She didn't see any of the animals though. But after that, she went back to the ship, closed the door, just to be sure that she was safe for the night. But even that night, though, she was wondering, what planet did I end up on? She really had no idea. And even though she realized just 10 seconds in slip space would have been enough time for traveling to the destination that she was intended to go to. And even when she did check on the computer to see if this planet's coordinates matched any of the other records of in the star map or it is the computer's database. But as she looked, there were no match whatsoever. So maybe she had crashed on an undiscovered planet. And that gave her some relief. If this planet was not in the official database, maybe this was an unexplored planet which hasn't been explored or discovered yet. So that gave her at least some advantage. So if there were even some Italian life form on this planet, she would not be unknown for that for sure. For the next couple of days after this, she started to look around an area. She always brought some of her supplies but when she came across a strange animal, it looked like a dog, but having very long, pointy ear and repeated the same word over and over. Eevee, Eevee, Eevee. She wondered if this was this creature's name, Eevee. And even though this Eevee creature seems to be very quite friendly, she didn't want to hesitate to go forward to this creature because this is a whole new world, a brand unexplored planet, and she had no idea what creatures can be friendly or hostile, or if this can be dangerous. But as the time was going on, this particular Eevee, what it is called itself, remained by her side, or at least close to her ship. After all, after that, she actually gave this Eevee some of her food, and this particular Eevee liked it. Maybe that's the reason why this particular Eevee stayed around her ship. But as herself timed them, her own supplies was getting lower and lower, and she realized if she can't find another food source anytime soon, she was starved. Water supplies would not be that much a problem because there was this small river nearby. She could just always get that water to get some purified to be drinking water. But food. Sure, she found a lot of berries and bushes in the area, in the forest, but she wanted to just start eating them because she wasn't really sure if this was poisonous or even that it was too safe for her to eat. But this Eevee, after this Eevee had somehow heard that she had very low on food and that she was hungry, this particular Eevee actually somehow brought her to this tree in the middle of the forest. This particular Eevee pointed at this tree, and even though it says only Eevee, and Catherine was very hesitating, even though she wasn't believing if this food was even edible for her. But what had she had to lose? After all, she only had maybe as 2 days left of the supplies of her own food that she had. So she tried one of those. It to her it reminded her of it like an apple, and it was actually sweet and it was very delicious. Now she thanked this Eevee by taking one of the apples, what she called it, and gave one of it to the Eevee, and it thanked her by smiling and eating it. So Catherine picked more of these particular apples and brought it back to her ship. But over time, she realized maybe that she needed to find some other potential food source because she doesn't even know how long this tree will produce these particular apples. And there were no fish in this river, so that was out of the question. And she didn't know if she would hunt animals, but having this Eevee to help her for some reason, she discovered that it had at least some form of intelligence. And she actually decided why not to let this particular Eevee to save her. And actually bonded over with her, and even only for this short time, she started actually like this Eevee. And considering it as her friend, after all, this Eevee had not only gave her a new type of food to eat, but also gave her something else that she had lacked for a while: company. She didn't had any companion for a while, and also, one thing that she realized also for one thing, the five-star Osiris hasn't even been seen in a few weeks now. So she realized they aren't even looking for her at this particular planet. But even though there was probably only a matter of time before this planet would be discovered, but eventually, Catherine decided maybe it was time to leave this particular place. So, what she did, used the last of the remaining power of the ship that was still remained to have it destroyed. It actually had been having given this one special designed self-destruct function. Normally, if a ship would have destroyed, it would make a crater or something, a big explosion. But this one was meant to be vaporizing the ship rapidly damaging the surrounding area. That was one thing that was probably best. So Catherine packed some of her personal belongings that she had, and she destroyed the ship, and she, along with the Eevee, left the forest and they continued walking. But on her walk, she noticed there were tons of other type of animals out there. There were tons of different birds-like creatures, even dragon-like, and they all repeat the same name. So maybe she wonders, this planet is a very unique of its own kind. She has never heard of anything like it before until now. But as they were walking, after 2 days, Catherine realized that in the distance she saw what looks like buildings. She actually had found a human settlement. She was worried because she was well known within this Earth government. But she was hesitated, so she took what looked a cloak over her head like a hood to only almost concealing her head. But she did that and walked around. When she walked into a small town, she estimated could have been maybe as 100, maybe 200 people at most. But she saw that a lot of different people actually had this type of these animals as companions. But this suddenly she saw that one of them holding this strange red-white ball, and right a red bean hit one of those animals and disappeared. She was curious to know more about that technology, what it's about, and what it using it for. So she took shelter in this local home, which is she found out Pokemon Center. She was given to spend the night there, and she asked this so-called Nurse Joy about different Pokemon there is. She wanted to know how many Pokemon there is. And Nurse Joy was a little bit surprised because if this is a woman who's traveling with Eevee, she probably even know. And even though she mentioned this was actually not her Eevee, this Eevee found her. And now just is her friend. That's not as understandable since Nurse Joy saw that Catherine didn't have any particular Pokeball. But then she offered one Pokeball to Catherine to make sure that Eevee won't be taken by any others. So Catherine used it. She wanted to know more about this, how this technology worked. And she was just said that she was curious because she was saw herself like a scientist. And Nurse Joy actually said that there were um, scientists in this town who was doing his own research of different Pokemons and all that. So she actually was sending over to this scientist, and his name was Leo. And he actually had this turtle like creature named Squirtle. And over time, Catherine and Leo actually started getting a bit more closer. In fact, they started getting considered as more as their friends. But even still, Catherine was very curious more about these Pokemon creatures. But she was even very nervous, afraid. She never told Leo of her true origin, where she was from, because she had tried to move on to make a new life. She had stopped using her last name. She only called herself Catherine. And eventually, Catherine and Leo, they actually got married. And Eevee, who is actually it turned out to be a girl, Eevee, or actually like her bridesmaid. Eevee was really happy to see Catherine so happy, smiling at time. And Catherine had even said to this Eevee one time that you, Eevee, are really my true friend. You helped me so much. Helped me to find food, helped me to find a purpose in life. I couldn't much be more happier to have you as my true friend. And for that, I'm really grateful. Eevee smiled and laughed at her, but then Eevee just started saying Eevee, 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 because even Eevee was happy to that. Later, Catherine and Leo discovered they were expecting a baby within the next few months, and they actually had a baby girl. And Eevee, she became a little bit protective of Catherine's newborn baby, which understandable. And eventually, Catherine even had a baby boy only like 2 years later. Evie was still very protective of both Catherine's two children. And even after all this, it has been a few years and still no one has actually found Catherine. But Catherine has started to wonder, what if she wasn't in her own dimension anymore? Because that 10-second slip space travel would have been enough for even for and not even like 2 light years travel. So maybe that could have been the reason why that no one actually even recognized her, or why no one actually had found her yet. Maybe this is the reason why this planet with its all amazing creatures or Pokemons as she called them. But for that, she was just happy to have found a new purpose in life because decided to spend her scientific mind to help Leo with his research. Of course, Leo had to help her to get the hand of understanding of some of this research he was doing. But he was surprised of how bright she were, how brilliant scientist. And for that, she was just happy that she had moved on, found a new purpose, found a new life, a family, but most of all, a true friend in her Pokemon Eevee. And this is how Catherine Halsey and Eevee found a true friendship. The end.